You know that moment when the men in the room start talking about the game? The room suddenly has a password. Someone says, "Did you see that play?" Another guy starts naming players, like everyone was born with the same mental spreadsheet. A phone comes out, highlights play. Voices get louder. Everyone knows when to laugh, when to groan, when to argue, and when to say, "That call was terrible." And then there is one man sitting there with a polite little smile, holding his drink like it is a passport from another country. He is not angry. He is not judging anyone. He just does not care. And somehow, that can make people act like something is missing. Because in many male spaces, sports are not just entertainment. Sports are a social shortcut. They let men belong without getting too personal. They let men show excitement, loyalty, grief, pride, rage, heartbreak, and tenderness while pretending the whole thing is just about a ball. So, when a man does not care about sports, people may treat it like a missing piece of masculinity. They ask, "What do you even do on Sundays?" They say, "Come on, you have to have a team." They joke like he forgot to install the basic man update. But he may not be missing the sports gene. He may simply be less attached to one of the main scripts men are handed for connection. And if you are that man, the strange part is not always that you dislike sports. The strange part is how often you have had to explain it. You can say you do not follow football, and suddenly it sounds like a confession. You can sit quietly during Super Bowl talk, and the room starts sorting you into categories. Pretentious, weak, awkward, not one of the guys. But not caring about sports is rarely just about sports. Sometimes it is about identity. Sometimes it is about stimulation. Sometimes it is about childhood. Sometimes it is about refusing to perform a version of masculinity that never felt like yours. Sports can be beautiful. They can create ritual, discipline, community, family memories, and real belonging. This is not about mocking men who love the game. It is about understanding the men who do not. One reason this feels loaded is that sports fandom is common enough to feel invisible. The National Sports and Society Survey, a U.S. adult survey first fielded in 2018 and 2019, has been used by researchers to study how sports fandom connects with identity, gender, sexuality, and social belonging. One published analysis found that most U.S. adults identified as sports fans to some degree. So if you are a man who genuinely does not care, you may be in a smaller social lane than people admit. And being in the smaller lane can turn a preference into a test. A boy may learn early that sports are one of the easiest ways to be accepted by other boys and men. You can talk about the score instead of talking about loneliness. You can debate a trade instead of admitting you miss your friend. You can cheer beside your father for 3 hours and feel close without either of you having to say, "I needed this." For some men, that is warm and meaningful. For others, it feels like standing outside a house where everyone else has a key. They may remember being the kid who did not want to play football in the yard, or the teenager who preferred music, computers, books, drawing, gaming, cooking, theater, photography, puzzles, or simply thinking in peace. They may remember adults trying to redirect them, as if interest in sports would prove they were developing correctly. And the message was not always spoken out loud. Sometimes it came through teasing, sometimes through silence, sometimes through the way everyone relaxed when another boy knew the stats. A lot of men learn that liking sports is not only a hobby, it is evidence. Evidence that you are normal. Evidence that you are competitive enough. Evidence that you are easy to talk to. Evidence that you are masculine in a way other men can quickly recognize. So when a man says, "I'm not really into sports," he may not just be sharing a preference. He may be stepping outside a social expectation. That takes more courage than people realize. Sports work as male bonding, partly because they give emotion a container. The rules are clear. The teams are clear. The conversation has a beginning, middle, and end. There is always something to react to. For men raised with limited emotional language, this can be powerful. A father may not know how to ask his son what is happening inside him, but he may know how to sit beside him during a game. The game becomes the bridge. That connection is not fake, but it is not universal. Some men do not feel regulated by competition. They feel drained by it. The shouting, the tribal energy, the constant ranking, the pressure to pick a side, the endless argument over who dominated, who choked, who deserved it, who is soft, who is a real man. To someone else, that is fun. To them, it feels like noise wearing a jersey. Their nervous system may prefer quieter forms of connection. One-on-one conversation, shared projects, music, long walks, a private text thread, a good film, a kitchen at night. Sitting in the same room while doing separate things. That is not less social, it is socially selective. This is where the stereotype gets lazy. People assume a man who does not watch sports must be disconnected from other men. But many men who do not care about sports are deeply observant. They notice who is performing confidence. They notice when a casual conversation becomes a status contest. They notice how quickly the room decides what kind of man is allowed to relax there. They may avoid sports talk, not because they cannot keep up, but because the ritual feels like putting on a costume. And costume fatigue is real. If a man has spent years being told to be more competitive, more aggressive, less sensitive, less quiet, less nuanced, then refusing to fake enthusiasm can become a small act of self-respect. He is not saying sports are bad. He is saying that is not where I come alive. For some men, not caring about sports also has a body memory attached to it. They may have been picked last, mocked in gym class, told to toughen up, measured by coordination they did not have yet, forced into a public test they never asked to take. They may have loved movement but hated the humiliation that came with organized competition. And when something becomes a stage for shame, the adult mind does not always separate the game from the memory. A man might say, I just don't like football. But underneath, part of him remembers being 9 years old and hoping the ball would never come near him. Not every man who dislikes sports has that story. But some do. Others simply formed their identity somewhere else. A father who loved jazz more than baseball. A mother who taught curiosity instead of competition. A grandparent who fixed radios. An older sibling who introduced them to films, code, poetry, design, or quiet competence. Their masculinity did not grow around a scoreboard. It grew around attention. And that matters because men do not all need the same doorway into being men. There are men whose care shows up in repairing things, remembering details, protecting peace, making art, asking good questions, raising children gently, cooking dinner, reading the room, staying loyal, or building a calm home where people can breathe. None of that becomes less masculine because there is no trophy at the end. The deeper issue is that many cultures give men too few acceptable ways to belong. If you remove sports, what is left? For some men, plenty. For others, almost nothing. That is why a man who does not care about sports can make people uncomfortable. His indifference exposes how much male friendship sometimes depends on shared distraction. If we cannot talk about the game, can we talk about our lives? If we cannot argue about a team, can we admit we miss each other? If there is no score, what do we measure? That question can feel too intimate, so people turn it into a joke. But the joke often hides a fear. If you do not share my ritual, do we still have a way to connect? The answer can be yes, but it requires a bigger idea of connection. A man who does not care about sports may still care deeply about excellence. He may care about craft, strategy, beauty, fairness, loyalty, endurance, teamwork, and devotion. He may understand all the emotional ingredients of sports just through another language. He may get emotional about a film score, a well-designed tool, a perfect paragraph, a hard conversation that finally becomes honest, a child gaining confidence, a friend keeping a promise, or a quiet morning when nobody needs anything from him. That is not emptiness. That is a different map of meaning. Still, there is a shadow side. Sometimes not caring about sports is freedom. Other times it becomes armor. A man may dismiss every sports conversation as shallow because he feels excluded by it. He may turn preference into superiority. He may decide, those guys are all the same, because it hurts less than admitting, I never learned how to join them. That is understandable, but it can also make his world smaller. There is a difference between not being interested and needing to prove you are above it. Peace does not need contempt. A secure man can say, I don't follow sports, but I get why you love it. And he can also say, I'd rather connect with you another way. That is the healthy distinction. Not performing interest is honest. Refusing every bridge is isolation. You do not have to memorize rosters to belong with men. You do not have to fake excitement to be socially acceptable. You do not have to pretend a championship matters to you when it does not. But you may have to learn how to offer another doorway. Ask about the feeling under the game. Was it exciting because the team came back? Was it meaningful because they watched with their dad? Was it comforting because Sundays always had that rhythm? You do not have to care about the sport to care about the person. And if you are the man who never cared, maybe the goal is not to become a fan. Maybe the goal is to stop treating your difference as a defect. Maybe you were never missing the sports gene. Maybe you were noticing that belonging should not require a uniform. Maybe you were built for quieter rituals, deeper conversations, smaller circles, and forms of loyalty that do not need a crowd to verify them. That does not make you less of a man. It makes your masculinity less outsourced. So the next time someone says, "Wait, you don't watch the game?" You do not need a defense lawyer. You can just tell the truth. Not really, but I hope your team wins. And if the relationship matters, ask the better question. What do you love about it? Because sometimes the most interesting thing is not the sport. It is the need underneath it. The need for belonging, the need for ritual, the need for safe emotion, the need to be close to other men without making the moment too exposed. Once you see that, you do not have to reject the room. You can simply stop pretending the only way into it is through the scoreboard. Maybe you are not broken because you do not care about sports. Maybe you just learn to find meaning where the noise gets quiet enough to hear yourself. And maybe the real question is not, why don't you care about sports? Maybe it is, what kind of connection were you always looking for instead? If this felt familiar, leave a comment with the social ritual everyone expects you to enjoy. But you never really did.